This question is about the topic of anxiety about the future and negative outcomes. Welcome to our Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons series. In each episode, we answer your questions, reveal the powerful life lesson, and offer you lots of practical tips and advice to help you live in balance, harmony, and flow. Why can't I stop imagining and fearing the worst will happen? I'm living in a state of constant anxiety and experiencing uncomfortable and painful red light feelings of fear, guilt, etc. all the time. How do I deal with this?
Thank you for the question. Take a breath. Can we dissect the question? Do you mind dissecting the question? Just giving me the title. Now, before I say anything, if Alex just reads the title, just see what you think.
The topic title.
Yes.
Anxiety about the future.
Okay, stop. What is anxiety? A red light. So what she's saying, I create red lights about the future, David. So great. So remember what I'm always saying, separate the red light from the thought. So the first step is, I create red lights about the future, David. Okay, thank you. Why do you choose to create the red lights about the future? What is your thought process? Mm-hmm. And I would guess this person would say something like, well, I want to know the future. Mm-hmm. I want to know what's going on. I'm worried about the future. Yeah. I won't be able to cope with the future. I'm thinking that if something happens to me, I'm not going to be able to deal with it. I don't know. And really what I'm looking for is certainty about the future. And here's the problem. Here's the life lesson. This is what this is about. Because I have to tell her, I'm very sorry. And if I'm the only one to tell you, you don't know, and you cannot control the future. Not only you, nobody else in the universe can control the future. So you can sit and you can fret and you can plan and you can create and you can be negative and you can do all of those things, and the future will just come along in the same way. And so you've got to go down, do the separation and find what it is that she's saying.
Okay, David, if I was presented with a situation and there's a possibility of a negative outcome, something going wrong, surely it's inappropriate to act passive and do nothing. Surely it's a good idea to try and plan ahead and react to the red light feelings at the prospect of something bad happening. How do I know the difference between what I'm imagining and what's real and what I should do?
You consider if that's a real possibility, but I would also ask you, are you creating the possibility for that situation going right? Are you equally creating the same possibility? Yeah. So I'm not saying be foolhardy and reject, nothing will go wrong in my life at all. Everything will work out right. But what I am saying is be realistic, be honest. Yeah. So if you're going to spend time on, I'd love to go and do this job, of course you should do the correct research about the company, about the role, do all the stuff you need to do. But you should also equally think about why you want to do this job, what it's going to offer you, why you can offer it. And so you get a balanced Wu Wei approach. So what this lady, I think, is doing is just focusing, choosing to focus on, and this is what I hear with my clients time and time again. They say something like this, they bring me an issue, we discuss the issue, and then I hear the magic word, I agree with you, David, but, and then they give me another issue. Well, this could happen, couldn't it? And then we talk about that, and then they say, right, okay. But, and then they give me another issue. Yeah. So what they're doing, and I end up saying, Martians could land, couldn't they, and wipe us all out? Why don't you consider that? Why don't you consider every negative scenario? Because what she's saying is, I want to have an answer for every single possible negative scenario before I move forward. Yeah. And you know what that means? You never move forward.
And you stay stuck and blocked on the carousel.
And then guess what happens? Then you moan about being stuck and stopped and stuck. So You don't move forward. You stay where you are. Then you moan and say, oh, I can never make decisions. I can never do this. And I always say, not making a decision is making a decision. Listen to this. Not making a decision is making a decision. You're choosing to get on the carousel, going around and around, finding excuses not to get off the carousel. Alex is absolutely right. You should be realistic. Look at the pros and the cons of every situation. Yeah. And then, as I've said in previous videos, make a judgment. You're not perfect. That judgment could be wrong. It also could be right. Why would you always want to veer towards the negative? Yeah. Because you're trying to future-proof yourself. Yeah. You're trying to future-proof yourself from emotional pain without accepting that you are creating emotional pain. Because if it does go wrong, then you're faced with a new set of circumstances. It's like, well, here's a roundabout, here's a crossroads. I'm going to choose that. Then you go down that road and you think, well, this is the wrong road. Don't worry, there'll be another roundabout, another crossroads. You can make another decision. You don't have to keep on planning and over-planning and prefabricating and going round, because then you're choosing. You might as well say, I'm not going to move forward, David, because I can't be certain. And if I'm not certain, then I'm going to sit on the roundabout and moan. And that's what you're doing. And this is then creates more anxiety, more upset, more problems. And then you moan about those. You've got to be clear. You look at the situation authentically, truthfully, honesty with integrity. You make your best decision at the time. Yeah. If it's the wrong decision, you make another decision.
Yeah. And I think, the key for me in what you said there, David, is this thing about, because the human-centered mind, its main kind of role is to try and protect you and keep you safe. All your human-centered mind is really interested in considering is how things could go wrong.
Yes, the worst.
What are the worst case outcomes of this situation, whether it's right here and now or in next week, next month, next year, 10 years' time. It likes to ruminate on all these possibilities because it's very creative. It's got you have a fantastic creative imagination, which is one of your greatest assets. But if you allow the human-centered mind to run that energetic quality within you, it will spend it entirely. It's like spending all your great asset entirely on thinking about negative outcomes. The human-centered mind does not want to sit down with a sheet and say, well, here's the positive possibilities, here's the neutral possibilities, and here's the negative possibilities, i.e. looking at the reality of what could or might happen. All it's interested in is focusing on the negative. And if you don't step in, as you say, and learn to control the human-centered mind through compassionate self-discipline practices, which we talk about in most of our videos, you will spend all your time thinking about the negative scenarios, the negative possibilities, which will create the red light feelings, which you're ironically trying to avoid in the first place.
And then that's well explained. And then another thing happens that falls that the human-centered mind absolutely loves, and then thinking negatively becomes familiar. Yeah. And the human-centered mind loves doing the familiar, loves doing the same thing, loves going round and around on the carousel. This is like a comfort blanket. And I always say, be careful, because a comfort blanket can smother you. And this is a problem. It will love the familiar. Oh, yes, well, let me think of another negative scenario. I tell you, when I get a new client, this is normally the first 1 or 2 sessions. We're just combating. They've spent a lifetime thinking of negative scenarios, and no one's ever challenged them. Because when they challenge them, guess what? They come up with another negative scenario, then another negative scenario. And then we're back to the Martians. What happens if Martians land, David? Well, what happens? I don't know what happens. Oh, well, I need to know what happens. I need a Martian defense plan. You know, this is what the mind does, because the mind is not your enemy. It's trying to keep you safe in a world that's not unsafe. Yeah. We can't be safe in this world. We don't know what's going to happen.
So I guess if it's familiar and it's more of a habit, a repeated series of choices that you've been making this choice to follow the human-centered mind's negative scenarios and possibilities without questioning them for maybe all your life, initially to change tack, to do things differently, like how we're explaining, that will take some conscious effort in terms of sitting down, pausing, and maybe even writing out, hold on, so this is the negative my human-centered mind's presenting me with, and actually writing out, well, what are the other possibilities here, and creating a more balanced view. Would you say that's a good exercise to do before it becomes a new familiar habit?
So you mentioned one thing there I just want to make a point of. You mentioned the word habit. Yeah. And I'm only going to mention this because I hear this every day. Oh, it's a habit. Yeah. I can't do anything about it. Oh, it's my habit. Oh, I know it's wrong, but I can't do anything about it. Remember, a habit is only a choice that you've set on default. A habit is still your choice. You are still choosing. And a habit is just an excuse to stop you taking responsibility for that choice. And then another thing that Alex says, oh, yeah, but David, this involves a bit of work, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, you're telling me I've got to take responsibility?
Every time I think something negative.
Oh, it's easier to get on the carousel. I just heard this yesterday from a client. Oh, dear, you mean every time I've got to... I said, well, aren't you worth it? Aren't you worth that effort? This, to me, is what spirituality. Are you worth that effort? And then this is why you like to rip out, well, I'm not worth it. Well, I'm unworthy. Well, it's too hard. Well, and this is it. If you say this to yourself, ask yourself, would you do this to your child? If your child comes up to you and says, Mom, could you just help me? Dad, could you just help me on this problem? I keep on making mistakes. Would you say to your child, actually, you're not worth it. It's too hard work. I can't be bothered. Oh, you just carry on. Just wreck your life. I can't be bothered. Well, of course you wouldn't. Then why are you doing that to you? So coming back to your question, one of the things, and we may do a video on this. We call it this swinging pendulum. The emotional pendulum, swinging from yin to yang and wu wei in the middle. So here's a way that you can do it. I think we've described it on other videos. Get a piece of paper, draw 2 lines, so you've got 3 columns. You'll fill the negative one very easily.
So this is possible outcomes of any scenario you're faced
with. Any thought.
Yeah, so you've got 3 columns.
3 columns. You'll fill the negative one very easily.
Yeah.
You can write all day on that. And this is what you must do. You must do equally the opposite one. So if you say, I'm not worthy, what would be the extreme opposite of that? It's not I am worthy, is I am, I don't know, supreme. I am a god. I am superior. And then what would be the wu wei? So when you get a problem, you think of the negative. Well, I'm taking this job on. I may not like it. I may get sacked.
The boss might hate me.
The boss might hate me.
I might not be able to. I won't be able to cope with the workload. I'm worried about the commute, so it's going to be a problem. Right. So all the negatives.
Then you do the positive. The boss is going to love me. The commute's going to be fantastic. Oh my God, this job's going to be easy. I'll be promoted in 6 months. And then people will say to me, this is what they'll say to me when I suggest this method before I'd give you the center line. And then they say, well, that's ridiculous, David. I couldn't do that. That's absolutely stupid.
To believe all the positives.
To believe all the positives. I said, well, it's equally as stupid to believe all the negatives. Yeah. And they don't see it.
And that's the trap. That's the human-centered mind's got you in.
That's the trap. That is exactly what Alex says. This is the trap. Do the equal opposite. Yeah. Why isn't that, as Alex just said, why don't you start the job and the boss thinks you're wonderful and promotes you within a week? Like, oh, that's ridiculous. But you think these negatives are
they come
possible.
So easily.
So once you've done the 2 extremes, as I said, the negative will be easy. Do the extreme opposite, and then do the Wu Wei.
Yeah.
What would be the center of these two?
Yeah.
Try that exercise and let us know how you get on. Because what it will do, it's like a meditation. It just allows you to balance up your mind a little bit.
So just to be clear, the center, the Wu Wei of those two extremes would be, if we use the example of the new job and kind of thinking about what's going to happen with the new job. So the Wu Wei would be things like, the tasks I'm going to be given will be challenging, and some I'm going to find quite difficult, others not, but I'll manage. Or
if I don't manage, then I'll ask somebody because I'll be new at the job.
The Wu Wei would also be something like, I'm going into a company with, 50 new people in an office and 2 new line managers, and chances are I'm not going to get on 100% with everyone, and perhaps not everyone is going to get on with me, and that's okay.
I could make some really good friends, lifetime friends.
Yeah, so you're neither one extreme or the other. You're considering the balance for you.
Right.
And that whole exercise, just pausing and taking the time to do that exercise, that really will dissolve the red light feelings.
Absolutely.
That will dissolve the anxiety. Absolutely. Because you're actually, for the first time for some people, beginning to take a more rational, balanced approach to what's happening.
But what you'll find when you do that exercise, it's so difficult because you'll be drawn to the negative all of the time.
So you have to keep
and even when you write the positive, you'll fill out the negative column and you'll go, well, I've got nothing to say in the positive. And that's how ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
Because you are so focused on negative because all of your life. And then, as I've said in previous videos, look back and see where you've learned that behavior from. Look back. It'll be somebody important in your life, mother, father, grandparents, aunties.
Wanting to keep you safe, worrying about things are going to go wrong.
Giving you all the negative scenarios about going out or be careful when you go out.
For your own good.
For your own good, exactly.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to ask you, David, related to this. So if we do the exercise where we're taking a balanced view of what might happen, what could happen, etc. So we do that. At what point do we have to almost stop thinking about it, stop strategizing, and just hand it over to the universe?
Well, at the time where you actually and truly, and this is where, I'm talking all the time about truth, honesty, integrity. You truthfully believe that this is the correct path for you. Mm-hmm. You truthfully believe you can look and you could speak to me or put it in the group. This is what I've chosen to do. Yeah. This is my decision.
With the knowledge I've got now,
this is what I've chosen.
I cannot know everything. No. I cannot control everything.
I'm not saying it's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm saying with everything I've got and with sitting and meditating, I've chosen this path. I can change it in the future. But for right now, this is the path I've chosen now not to take the job. For all of these reasons. Or I've chosen to take the job. Or I've chosen to tell them I'll think about it for a week. Those are all great decisions.
Yeah, great. So it's a kind of a combined approach, really. It's doing the overview, but then knowing when to make the decision and then almost park it and then review later on. But not keeping ruminating, checking, revisiting. At some point, you have to say...
But that's back on the carousel.
Yeah, exactly.
You see, you're back on the carousel now.
Yeah.
Because the mind is very clever. I read a comment in the community a couple of days ago saying how clever the mind is. And once you've block one way, guess what he does? He doesn't give up. He finds something else and he'll go somewhere else. And you've got to that's why this work is very important and sharing this work with you, because your mind is very creative and it won't give up wanting to protect you. It won't give up wanting you to live in this utopian Disney world where everything is perfect. You're okay. Everybody loves you. Everything works out. You don't have to worry. It's not hard work. Everything comes easy to you. I'm sorry, that's not the real world. I wish it was for you, but in a way I don't, because that would be very boring. Wouldn't that be boring? I think it would.
Great. Well, I hope that's given you some practical tips and advice and perhaps a new perspective even on how to manage any red light feelings of anxiety or concerns about trying to future-proof or creating negative scenarios about future outcomes.
Unless you want to be an expert at the negative. Unless you want to be Professor Negative.
Yeah.
or we call it doubting Betty.
Yeah,
if you want to
negative
be a
Betty.
Negative Betty, I'm sorry, I forgot.
If you want to be a negative Betty,
if you want to be a negative
that's
Betty,
your choice, but we're offering you a different choice, a different path.
And just before we finish, can I tell you why a lot of people like to be a negative Betty? It's because it's very easy, isn't it? Every positive you give somebody, you can find a fault in it.
But it just keeps you in red light feelings.
It does keeps you in red light feelings.
It's no good. It serves no purpose whatsoever. So if you can actually relate to this, if you recognise it, that it's something you do, please comment below and tell us what you think. And any questions, please do ask us, and we'll always be very happy to answer them for you as well.